spent a lot of money to rig the boat up. I've got no more. I'm all in. We're on a fish! Baby! That's the rip!
That was all the time Dave Marciano and his crew had between the first rush of seawater through a failed plank and the moment their wooden boat, the Angelica Joseph, slipped beneath the freezing Atlantic 18 miles off Jeffrey's Ledge. The ocean does not announce its intentions. On a freezing January afternoon in 2003, roughly 18 nautical miles off the Massachusetts coast near Jeffrey's Ledge, a wooden fishing vessel named Angelica Joseph began taking on water through a failed plank. Within 33 minutes the boat was gone, its crew scrambling into the cold Atlantic while another vessel raced to pull them from the sea. The captain of that doomed boat was Dave Marciano. He was still in his 30s, already a father, already carrying the weight of a livelihood that had demanded everything from him since he was a boy. That day did not kill him. It simply made clear, in the most brutal terms, what the rest of his life would require, the ability to lose everything and still return to the water. Dave Marciano was born on December 5, 1965, into a middle-class family in the Beverly and Ipswich area of Massachusetts. His father worked in insurance. None of his siblings chose the sea. Dave has described himself as the black sheep, the only one who refused college and the family business. From the age of 11 he was already working on the Yankee Fleet party boats out of Gloucester, learning the rhythms of the harbor, the moods of the weather, the quiet authority of men who made their living from the Atlantic. After high school he moved into commercial fishing, first as a deckhand, later as a captain of other men's vessels. By the early 1990s he had earned his own captain's license and bought the wooden boat he named after his two oldest children, Angelica and Joseph. The vessel became both tool and identity. It carried him through seasons of groundfish and the increasingly valuable pursuit of bluefin tuna, the fish that would eventually define his public life. The bluefin is not an ordinary quarry. It is powerful, expensive, and increasingly regulated. Catching one requires patience, precise knowledge of temperature breaks and current lines, and the willingness to stay offshore when the weather turns ugly. Marciano learned those lessons the hard way. He has spoken of the first large bluefin he ever hooked as a young man, the sheer physical force of a 500-pound fish fighting for its life, and the adrenaline that convinced him this was the work he would never leave. That conviction survived the sinking of the Angelica Joseph. After the rescue, after the loss of 10,000 pounds of fish and the boat itself, he did not walk away. He found a 38-foot Daniel's Head fiberglass Novi hull and named it Hard Merchandise. The name carried two meanings. Publicly it advertised the firm, high-quality fish he delivered to the auction. Privately it nodded to a shared love of science fiction stories he and his daughter Angelica enjoyed, a small private joke carried onto the water every day. Hard Merchandise became the platform for the next chapter of his career. By the time National Geographic's Wicked Tuna began filming in Gloucester in 2012, Marciano was already a respected figure in the local fleet. The cameras found a quiet, intense captain who measured success in pounds and dollars rather than screen time. Season after season he competed against other Gloucester captains for the limited quota of giant bluefin allowed under federal rules. The competition was real. Fuel costs, crew wages, boat maintenance, and the short window of the tuna season turned every trip into a high-stakes calculation. Some seasons Hard Merchandise ranked near the top of the leaderboard. Others left Marciano frustrated and financially strained. He never pretended the cameras made the fishing easier. They simply made the pressure visible to millions of viewers who had never stood on a pitching deck at 3 in the morning with a bent rod and a boat full of exhausted men. In December 2012, only months after the first season of the show had introduced him to a national audience, Hard Merchandise sank again. This time it happened at the dock at Gloucester Marine Railways. A through-hull fitting failed while the boat was tied up for the winter. Marciano received a call from the Coast Guard in the middle of the night. When he arrived he found only the antenna and windows protruding from the water. The boat was raised, pumped out, and eventually restored, but the episode carried a special sting. It was the second major vessel loss of his career. Around the same weekend another local boat, the Foxy Lady 2, went down with all hands. Marciano has spoken of that coincidence with the measured gravity of a man who understands that the difference between survival and catastrophe is often nothing more than timing and the thickness of a single fitting. The dangers of the work never remained abstract. Weather systems off New England can shift without warning. Fog can erase the horizon. Mechanical failure can turn a routine return to harbor into a race against rising water. Marciano has described nights spent offshore in conditions that claimed larger vessels, moments when he and his crew simply endured because there was no alternative. He has also spoken of the near miss that still haunts him. Years earlier, before his children were born, He had been offered a berth on a boat that later went down in the perfect storm of 1991. He declined the trip for another job that offered steadier work. The decision saved his life. He has never treated that fact lightly. Through all of it, the center of his world remained the family that waited on shore. Nancy Marciano married him in 1990. She came from a fishing background herself and understood the peculiar mixture of pride and dread that defines a fishing household. While Dave was offshore, she managed the household, raised the children, and lived with the knowledge that every departure carried risk. Their 3 children, Angelica, Joseph, and Eva Rose, grew up around boats and docks. Angelica later joined the crew of Hard Merchandise as a deckhand, appearing on the show and learning the trade from the inside. Joseph also spent time working alongside his father. The presence of family on the boat added another layer of responsibility. A captain can lose a vessel and still rebuild. Losing a child is a different order of loss entirely. Marciano has never romanticized the decision to bring his children into that world. He has simply accepted it as part of the inheritance he was passing on. The television series amplified both the rewards and the strains. Recognition brought charter clients, sponsorship opportunities, and a measure of financial stability that pure commercial fishing could no longer guarantee in an era of tight quotas and rising costs. It also meant long stretches of filming that overlapped with the most productive fishing periods. Cameras recorded arguments, exhausted silences, and the occasional triumph of a heavy fish coming over the rail. Marciano repeatedly insisted that the fish remained the priority. Fame was incidental. He continued to run charters through Angelica Fisheries, maintain an active presence on social media under the handle Captain Marciano, and stay connected to the Gloucester waterfront that had shaped him. In later years he opened a fish market on the Gloucester waterfront, selling local catch and show merchandise, an effort to keep both the business and the community's maritime identity alive. The series itself ended after 13 seasons. By then Marciano had become one of its most recognizable faces, a captain whose calm under pressure and willingness to speak plainly about risk and loss had earned him respect from both fellow fishermen and viewers. He continued fishing. The ocean had never been something he could leave. Even after the camera stopped rolling, the same seasonal rhythms, the same calculations about fuel and weather and quota, continued to govern his days. Updates from his boat still show bluefin on the deck, haddock in the boxes, and the familiar silhouette of Hard Merchandise moving through the same waters that nearly claimed him twice. What the public rarely sees is the quieter accumulation of cost. The missed birthdays and holidays that coincide with the height of the tuna run. The financial rebuilds after each sinking. The knowledge that every season brings news of another boat lost somewhere along the coast, another family waiting for a vessel that will not return. Gloucester's history is written in such absences. The Fisherman's Memorial along the waterfront stands as a permanent reminder that the industry has always extracted its price in lives. Marciano has lived long enough, and close enough to those losses, to understand that survival is never guaranteed and never permanent. It is only the next trip, the next season, the next chance to come home with enough money to keep the lights on and the boat floating. Yet the same waters that have taken so much have also given him a life he would not trade. The early mornings when the light is just breaking over the horizon and the fish finder lights up with a school of tuna. The moment a heavy fish is finally secured and the crew shares a brief